And so from now on, the meeting will be recorded, and also will find the proper way where to place these videos recording. And also as a reminder, we are governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct. So with that said, let me also share the meeting agenda as well in screen sharing, so that we can keep track of our discussion today. So first of all, thank you for everybody who's joined. We are setting up these recurrent model registry meetings so that we can continue and keep tabs on the progress for the Kubeflow model registry initiative here. I have a few items on the agenda. One of it, actually, I will seize the chance at the beginning of the meeting, so that while I have everybody, or sort of like the most of the people that can stay. I was informed that this schedule unfortunately collapses once a week per month with another meeting from AutoML. So my suggestion would be that in order to simplify, for moving this meeting on a Monday, just after the Kubeflow release meeting. So that will be a bit late EMEA time zone, because it will be at 7 p.m., but it will be just after the release meeting. This is what I'm going to act for, because also seems like the most compatible time slot. If anybody has some problems, concern, alternative suggestion, I'm happy to hear it, or otherwise I will move forward with this change of schedule. Going once, twice. Okay. So thank you for this, and sorry because it's really collapsing on the agenda, and it's like for the difficulties that some of the working groups are having a bi-weekly agenda that actually changes on time zone, so it's a bit difficult to say. Okay, for a quick status update, I think that I can do just a brief touching point for what concerning the Kubeflow side of things, and then also I invited Dheeraj and everybody else if they want to add. So just let me try to high-level recaps where we're at. We are having a working group called Vuji Data that is being discussed, that will hold both the Spark operator, this model registry initiative. So this is progressing, and we're keeping tabs on that initiative in the Kubeflow community meeting. So the meeting that is being held on the Tuesday. As part of that as well, we are having, so not only the Vuji Data, that will be the working group, but we also have the model registry proposal that is an open PR. So you will find the links all in the minutes of the meeting notes. And then finally, what we are discussing are the steps in order to onboard the project and onboard it as part of Kubeflow 1.9 release. So this is the high level points. And I think when it will come, especially to Kubeflow 1.9 roadmap and action plan, we can break it down in more concrete steps. So these are the three main highlights that I wanted to share. Dheeraj, do you want to add something more? Do you think this is a good setup? Ramesh, if you have any other comments, I will leave the floor open.
No, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is a good starting point.
Okay, excellent. Ramesh, do you want to add something?
I'm sorry, I was trying to see, what we have been, we are getting to a concrete plan as to what we want to deliver in 1.9.
Yeah, this is the next point in our agenda.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. So let's delve right into it. So it seems like it's the most. I'm not sure why I cannot click on the button anymore. Okay, cool. All right. So here we are sort of like invited from the release team. So that will be Ricardo and Stefano to provide some answer with regards of what we are planning, what is our plan, how is our strategy to go forward for the 1.9 release. We have as well some questions that I started to draft the answer for. But this is where I think is like we can get some inputs from this meeting. To me, there are, as an order of business, there are some specific questions like versions that we are depending on, and but I think that for, I would say, overall, we don't have any specific type dependency with version of other components, being components that can integrate, but it doesn't have any sort of like apparent dependencies on others. So I think that, for instance, like there is a question about if there is a specific notebook version that we depend upon. And I think that the correct answer here is to say, okay, we don't depend on an actual specific version for notebooks, but we have a Python client that we that is sort of like relevant for the scope. With other sort of like what are the work in progress points that we needed to tackle. I think for the Kubeflow 1.9, we need, first of all, to uplift what we have, the code that is currently in the Open Data Hub community organization. We will need to uplift the code there and taking steps to assess what is the best strategy to keep history and contribution attribution and uplift it with the fully Git history inside of a Kubeflow organization. We have as well an open item to add a customized manifest because as a background for what concerning Open Data Hub, we rely on the operator, but we understand that in Kubeflow community, we rely more on Helm chart for this topic. So this is currently tracked. There is some assessment for service mesh integration. And there is as well, I would classify it under stretch goal for the cluster storage container initializer, because a colleague of ours, so Andrea here, has been doing some experiment in using this concept that is a K-serve concept, but I think is a good extension for the how to sort of like use the model registry effectively in order to sort of like reference the URI that you have from model registry there. Dheeraj, yeah, I see your comment here about taking the action item to move the code. If you don't mind, I am already starting the work on there also because I have repository access. So definitely we can collaborate together on it. But let's say what I would like to see is that if I'm able to have a branch specifically and then sort of like have a merge commit so that we don't squash all the history that we have so far, I think this could be a good way to go. So this is what I'm currently testing for concerning the repository. More than the chat, is there any comments with the points so far?
Just a small point from my side. Thank you, Matteo. Like, I think for Helm or operator discussion, so most of the components using customized today, only K-serve, I guess, using Helm. So maybe it works to discuss like what is the, easier approach for model registry to move forward. Like, I can tell you like the reason why we use customize. So initially Kubeflow in 2018 was using GSONet and KSONet. But because like this project was archived, we're kind of like looking for more kind of like lightweight solution to deploy control plane on Kubernetes. And the problem with Helm was like it was not really straightforward to use it within kubectl, and it is why community decided to go with customize. I think like Kemonos also the call. Maybe you can share more kind of historical reasons why we choose customize, because he was driving this proposal before.
Yeah, Andre, so that's kind of addressed by the next point on the agenda, right? We're fine with going with manifest. So we do have an operator on the Red Hat side because it fits our ecosystem better, or that's the way we do things in Red Hat OpenShift AI. But yeah, for upstream projects just like DSP and other components, Kubeflow components will also have manifest, and we are working on like draft version of the manifest for the model registry.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because like like with this kind of overlay approach, I don't see any like things that Helm supports that Customize doesn't support. Rather than just in Helm, you can have more kind of tracking, better tracking in terms of the deploy or control plane, right? But you can always use Terraform or Pulumi, right? Scripts if you want to do additional integrations on top of the existing manifest. That is well like customized, like the very low, like very lightweight control plane mechanism.
Yeah, the bar for entry is low. We do have some concerns around it, which is sort of the next, it's related to the next point in the agenda. That customize can't be very dynamic though, right? For example, if you want to make like different decisions based on your environment configuration and stuff like that, you have to choose the right overlay and stuff like that. So an operator, for example, would have made that easier. Could have been more configurable through a custom resource to do that. But yeah, we'll accommodate that. We'll use customize and different overlays for different deployment models and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess like from your perspective, you only support one deployment model for the Kubeflow installation, right? And maybe like several one for users who just want to use Model Registry independently of other like Kubeflow components, right?
So there is a an immediate integration. Sort of the point of integration that we need to resolve. DSP uses MLMD, and Model Registry is based on MLMD. Do we deploy two different instances of it? That's kind of going to be inconvenient for users having the same kind of service running in two different applications or Kubeflow components, and having to set up different databases for it. So what ideally user would, and this is what we think would like to do, is reuse the same MLMD instance so that all their metadata is in the same database for pipelines as well as for the Model Registry. So for that to work, we'll have to make sure users can use the manifests, customized manifests for DSP and Model Registry together, right? For all kinds of combinations that they could get themselves into. If they just want to deploy DSP, then they should deploy the MLMD service dedicated to their DSP install. If they want to deploy DSP and Model Registry, then we need to be able to figure out which component is responsible for deploying MLMD, or how do we set up sharing and so on.
Yeah, makes sense.
So Dheeraj, just to make sure that I understand correctly, so indeed in this say work in progress that you have, you are using the customized manifest, but also considering what is the correct integration with the Kubeflow pipelines in the case that the MLMD service is available there, and sort of the combination of the two. Am I understanding correctly? Have I summarized correctly?
So that seems to be the pattern, right? With customized manifests, that you write different overlays for different scenarios. So the version we have there right now is assuming that you're going to deploy MLMD as part of the Model Registry. So we start with that simple scenario first, so that users can actually kick the tires and stuff, deploy the Model Registry service, try it out and so on. Then we'll write overlays for these different scenarios where you want to reuse MLMD that's already been deployed as part of DSP, and integrate that with the Model Registry.
Okay.
Ideally, in the end, and that's a discussion we need to have, is figure out what's best. If, in a situation where they're using all Kubeflow components, they're using the Model Registry as well as DSP, what would be the best location for MLMD to be deployed, right? So what we have right now is we have a single deployment that has both containers for the REST service for the Model Registry as well as the gRPC service. So it's a lot easier to manage. Our calls are also going to be a lot more frequent to the Model Registry, to MLMD from the Model Registry compared to what DSP does. So it makes sense to co-locate, sort of, right? MLMD with Model Registry. So we need to come up with like a prescribed deployment model that users can use the default sort of like base model where DSP assumes that MLMD is going to be deployed by the model registry. Does that make sense, Andre?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like basically in the first initial approach, you're still going to use the MLMD, which comes from the KFP installation, right? And you like kind of like iteratively going to migrate to the model registry, right? Is it correct that what am I saying?
So the version we have right now deploys its own.
Okay.
One way we could integrate things is point to the same database, right? But yeah, that's kind of left to the user. So you're going to have to try and figure out what would make it easiest for users to be able to use this. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, they're all Kubernetes configurations for database services and deployments and stuff, right? So users can customize it to their heart's content, but we also want to try and make it as easy as possible for users to be able to deploy it and come up with some kind of recommended way of deploying things so that they can get going as quickly as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. So basically, like I guess like default way of using MySQL today, right, with KFP as the DB backend, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Does it make sense, the point captured like this? So maybe an action item to check if it is the easiest conversions to sort of like factor in over the same database. And basically, since we keep the model registry as a sidecar container deployment, and then sort of like KFP has its own MLMD server. Dheeraj, have I summarized correctly this point?
To begin with, is what I'm
to begin
saying.
with, yeah.
Because like I mentioned, there are different like combinations. Users could find themselves in the situation where they have to make both the services work in different in various ways. They could have installed DSP already or pipelines already, or they could have deployed model registry first and so on.
Yeah, Ramesh.
So, is there any appetite or proposal you guys want to put together, put forward a Kubeflow community that, hey, let's install the registry always when we do the initial installation, so that it's there, and then we don't have to make that choice with the DSP with the KFP. Is that a viable path?
Isn't it something that maybe we can only consider after we are out of, say, alpha? Because if we are aiming for 1.9 as alpha,
Yeah.
I think that the approach that I summarize in this point here is actually the easier one to go. So it's like first, actually, I would expect is for sort of say in June 1.9, I expect the exact opposite. Like KFP is always there for a Kubeflow user, and sort of like a registry is optional. Eventually, as we are discussing, I think there can be, and it could be nice, I think, if in this deployment model for Kubeflow 1.9 June, model registry, if it is possible, uses the same database of KFP, but not the same server, not the same MMD server of KFP. And then eventually we move it. Like we can say, okay, then we go for same common database again, but also a common MLMD. We decide how is the best to overlay the two. And then progressively, eventually we will reach a situation where indeed we want the model registry to be sort of like a deployed out of the box convenience and useful feature for Kubeflow users, but I don't think that we can aim for it for 1.9.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll explore. Also, I saw some nods flowing, some thumbs up flowing, but if anybody wanted to add some comments, or please just take the voice. Because sorry, I'm just trying to take the notes and as well managing it. The running meeting is a bit complicated. All right. So I think this is it. Dheeraj, do you wanted to expand on some other direction for these other bullet points, or do you think that we covered it?
So one of the other things we need to discuss is what kind of databases are we going to support for model registry and pipelines, because as I understand it, there are like different database versions and even types required in pipelines, and we need to sort that out with model registry. MLMD can work with both MySQL and Postgres, but it only supports MySQL 5 as far as we know. It doesn't support 8, and because the authentication mechanism changed there in 8. So that's sort of a security issue with MLMD right now. So that's something we could try and fix in MLMD. And pipelines uses two different schemas from what we understand. It uses a schema for MLMD itself, and another schema where it stores its own metadata directly in a database. And it requires different versions of databases for that. Like MLMD is stuck at 5, and for its own direct metadata that it's storing in another schema, it requires 8. So that's something that we need to resolve, so users don't have to deploy different versions of the same database and so on to make this work. Ricardo's on the
Okay.
call. Ricardo's on the
Yeah.
call. You can add more information.
I don't know, Ricardo, if you can speak a bit further about the specifically this latter point, because I'm not sure that I fully understood in order to capture it in the minutes of the meetings.
Yeah, so as Gerard said, MLMD only supports MySQL 5 and Postgres, while KFP is using MySQL 8. And not only this, but they are also using specific features that are that's only available on MySQL 8. These specific ones are made for V1 backward compatibility. So that makes our virtual matrix for databases a bit complex for both components. So we need to find out if there's a way to make MLMD compatible with MySQL 8, or work as soon as possible to have Postgres support onto KFP. Other than that, I don't see there are other options here. Maybe the community has other ideas.
Let me just try ask you a question to understand, to check if I understand correctly. So when you're speaking about a KFP needs a MySQL 8 forward, you're speaking of some other feature that are not connected with the MLMD, which is embedded inside of the KFP. You're speaking about some other components in KFP that are using MySQL 8 and onwards. Do I understand correctly?
Yeah, let me try
Okay.
go deeper into the details. Although I don't believe we should do it so deeply, but
I just understand.
MySQL 8 supports window functions, and some of the SQL instructions written by the KIP team uses that window functions. It is only supported into MySQL 8. And for MLMD, I have no idea what's the blocker to migrate to MySQL 8. Maybe it's what Rush said about the security thing.
And thank you, Dheeraj. So I noted your comment. Ramesh?
Ricardo, is there any work going on in the KFP community to move it to to smooth out this, or move it to the Postgres database currently. Because maybe this is something we need to bring in more folks, or we need to go join the community to see how we can get
Yeah,
funded.
I was looking for this option as well, given that there's already some work ongoing into KFP codes to support Postgres. I see there's some new code added to KFP code that supports Postgres, but their tracker issue shows a lot more tests that we need to work with. Probably from the functional aspect, I think KFP already supports Postgres, but I can't say for sure. It's something that I'd like to bring on to the next KFP working group meeting. But I think, yeah, they are making good progress on Postgres, and we'll use Google Summer Code to make more good progress on that. So I guess for Kiplomo.9, we'll have Postgres support onto KFP. Maybe we can target support Postgres for Kubeflow Model Registry as well, um, at least for now, because I think we should work on having Model Registry to support MySQL as well. We One of the assumptions we made for KIP is that we should not rely on a single database vendor. So multiple vendors are recommended to support.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Ricardo, as well. KFP has some starting point for Postgres support, but we can't just drop MySQL support, right? Consider all the users that have deployed KFP in their environments, and they might have like support contracts and stuff for MySQL databases they are running. So I don't think it's something that we can go away from. What we could ask them to do is maybe move to a different version of MySQL, right? Because there are security issues in MySQL 5, but I don't think it's something we can drop altogether.
Yeah, after all, I think we should start like evangelize between pipelines users to begin migrating their V1 pipelines onto V2. Though I believe this might not justify an immediate migration because users might have hundreds of pipelines working. So I think for a midterm, we should start enforcing users to have to use V2 because it might be impossible to keep track multiple database vendors, especially between MySQL 5 and MySQL 8. By the way, if I remember correctly, MySQL 5 has achieved end of life for maybe a year. So yeah, I think we should start telling users that MySQL is not recommended anymore anyways. So yes, Ramesh.
Yeah,
Do,
thank you, Ricardo.
Ricardo, did you not recommend MySQL 5 or MySQL altogether?
No,
No.
I think MySQL 5 should not be recommended because it's end of
Yeah.
life.
Okay.
But we should support MySQL 8.
Right. Seems like there are two different tasks that we need to do, right? There is, I think since especially we as model registry, we are taking kind of wanting to support MLMD. Seems like we need to see whether we can support MySQL 8 for MLMD2, then we can bring in MySQL as a vendor. That's one. The second is the Postgres one. The Postgres on the side, I know at least on the Red Hat side, we tried the Postgres out in our initial offerings, so that works. So there we probably need to work with the KFP folks to bring that side of it to the Postgres, so that then we can give a choice to the user whether they can choose MySQL versus Postgres. So there is an immediate request. There is probably kind of a immediate task probably for us to evaluate MySQL, the probability of using MySQL 8, right? With the MLFD. If that works, at least some of the problems have been, we can avoid some of the immediate issues of not having 2 or 3 different databases.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so we need to investigate whether it's just a matter of like compiling it with a later version of the client library, or is it some API call issue in the client library in the MLMD code. So we can open that as an action item too.
Yeah, maybe we should capture that one as an issue for us and see if we can do anything towards 1.9, or otherwise we need to quickly say that that's not possible, right?
Yeah.
May I assign this one to Dheeraj? You seem to have a good overview and knowledge about this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask other members, there was one you were talking about earlier, Matteo, in terms of the integration with the model mesh Kser as a tentative one. If we were gonna do anything there, I think we need to either invite, we need to go into that community and evangelize that solution, or bring them, invite them in here so that we can have a conversation about that one.
Yeah, Kimonos.
Out of curiosity, I'm out of context, but that sounded interesting. What was the high-level idea that you had in mind
So,
Kser?
yeah, so in the Kser, there was a new feature that's being added. I believe it's in the beta. I think it's coming pretty close. Something called storage initializer, or what? I'm missing the word. What was so essentially the way it works? What I understand, cluster storage container. Yeah, essentially instead of you providing the URI to your S3 bucket, you provide a custom URI saying, for lack of better words, model registry : foo dot slash bar my food slash bar my model, right? So you don't provide, then it has, and you provide an extension into the Kser as to how that URI resolution happens. So then what the proposal is, when we have the model registry there in the Kubeflow itself, then we can, if the model is in there and reference there, we could point it to the model registry to directly deploy from it, rather than having the user having the knowledge of, since it's already registered in the model registry, it's easy to go grab it from there because all the information is right there. Did I get that one correctly, Matteo and Andrea?
Yeah, I would say in summary, I will leave it to Andrea because he's the one mostly working, but I would summarize it in the way of saying like Kserve as a plugin mechanism in order to make the resolution of the URI of whatever you make. And basically, this is a pluggable mechanism. The user can extend in their own platform. It's very convenient. Actually, it's very easy to extend and customize. So in that way, you could think of having this as a way of calling back the model registry so that the model registry can tell you, okay, you are calling for, I don't know, MNIST latest version. Here is where to actually find that model, or you can say, oh, give me the latest Mistral, give me the latest file to the model registry, and it will give back. I don't know, Andrea. Is Andrea on the call? Do you want to expand on it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that speaking technically is much more easier in the sense that how Kserve works is that it uses init containers in the pod that, let's say, the deployment happen. And with this approach, you can define your own CR of cluster storage container, which defines the, let's say, the supported URI formats that Kserve itself is able to parse and recognize, and will automatically inject your own image of cluster storage container that will be actually called whenever it identifies that the reference storage URI use your own supported formats. And then it's up to your implementation of this cluster storage container to say, implement the business logic. In the POC that I linked here in chat, I simply parsed the URI, and using the information that I parsed from the URI itself, I was able to call and query the model registry in order to retrieve the original storage location, and then simply reuse the existing puller methods that Kserve provides to download the actual model. For instance, falling back to the S3 or HTTP or whatever. In this way, you are somehow providing a sort of interface on top of the URI, such that there is a standard way to deploy models that are registered in the model registry. So I think I hope it summarized the idea behind this.
It was pretty good. Let me just 1 minute, if we have the time, to ask one last question. So Andrea, understand for the end user, the value then, it's pretty neat how under the hood Kserve allows you to have your own mechanism for getting the URLs. So for the end users, we want to standardize in Kubeflow URLs that we use for models, all of them ideally to be the model registry ones and not pass over S3 ones, so that they're uniformly used across different components.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, you are going to put the original S3 location into the registration of the model. So it will be stored in the model registry. But starting from that point, you will still reference using the model registry specific format at the moment of deployment and the moment of the reference.
Right. You abstract it out, the storage location.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks.
No worries.
All right.
One of the bigger aspects I was thinking, Kimona, on that one is especially in if there is a need to push the access to the registry, access to the model itself, wherever it's stored, you wanna hide it underneath the covers, right? This could be a good mechanism to have the model registry handle it. But I don't know whether that's a good use case or not.
If I understood correctly, I know it's an idea. Sorry if I interrupted you. I know it's an idea, but you described that even if we want to have then even not RBAC, but permission on who should be able to access what, this should then handle on the MLMD side and not try to put the authentication on S3 or any kind of backend system that there is.
Right.
That's super interesting. Okay.
Right. We can elevate that access up to the cube level, rather than the cube level or data role level, however we design it.
Nice.
Go ahead, Andrea. Sorry.
Yeah, one thing that is worth to add that, as Matteo already brought, I think, in the minutes of the meeting notes, is that we evaluate that for Kserve, and we are going to start the discussion on the model mesh side as well, because it seems the same feature is not supported there. So we are evaluating and started some discussion with the model mesh team in order to see how we can sort it out. So if we can, let's say, somehow reuse the same logic that was implemented in Kserve for model mesh, or if there is some other, let's say, discussion to bootstrap in order to see what we need to do to implement the same feature. because I think it would be beneficial to have the same feature in Model Mesh as well.
Then I really have to say kudos, and I'm really excited on how you approach it, like all together for the different working groups would to have the same experience. That's super nice to see how you're driving this.
No, thank you.
There is
Great to
also
hear.
another I think that we didn't touch on, but I think it's a meaningful, more on the technical level, but for customers, like basically what you end up doing is that you end up sort of like extending a Python function that, given the URL, basically do this resolution. So let's say for Kserve or Model Mesh that are Kubernetes, basically you have this mechanism, but for let's say for any other use cases, which is sort of like not using the concept of this init container, you can equivalently say reuse the Python function in your own way that you initialize in the storage. So somehow it's not, you're not forced to this concept of the init container. To me, it's like the best value is that you have this Python function, and basically it's okay. If you don't want the Python function, you will write it in Go, whatever language do you want. But there is a concept that I think is very extensible also in that regard. Okay, cool. Sorry, we divided a little bit, Dinesh. I don't know if we touched on all the points that you wanted to raise.
No, yeah, I think
Right.
we
Thank you.
captured action items for that, so that's good.
I think that the other points, so this is more or less as well the points that we are discussing and investigating. We are having some, we will need to reply to Ricardo and Stefano with some specific version. Here I've tried, I wouldn't spend the time in the meeting today, but if I've started to draft what I could detect. But as well, I think that overall, we don't have specific ties to any version in particular. So my inclination here is to reply with whatever versions are there for 1.9. So thank you, Ricardo, for that tracker issue of the version. What I need to check, I think what we will need to check from Model Registry point of view, from this point of view of the versions, is specifically that we tested the version that the Kubeflow 1.9 uses, because sort of like I don't think that we are relying on any specific version, say of say Kubernetes or Istio, if whatever will be Knative. I don't think that we even use that one. Dirash, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that we just need to ensure that we had good testing over those versions. Ricardo?
Yeah.
So Kubernetes, we're targeting to 129, but we want to support 127, 138 as well. But the main target will be 129. Customize, there's still some discussions across working groups, but so far latest version for customize is 501. Yeah, so 501 is still the version used. I don't know if we'll keep using this. Cert manager and you still, I don't know how related will be with you because you are releasing a backend. But yeah, I think worth checking if there will be some service mesh capabilities onto backend, and probably still cert manager might affect the dependencies version.
Yeah, we'll have dependencies on Istio and Cert Manager, Ricardo.
Yeah, worth noting that Istio 120 is the one we're targeting because it's the one that supports Kubernetes 129, but it's
Right.
still something we need to discuss with the other working groups because they're about to release 121, and close to the Kubeflow 1.9 release, they're going to release 122. But I believe The options that will be possible will be either 120 or 121. I tend to keep the 120 release, although they're about to release 121 soon, because it's the one that we are sure that it's the one that supports Kubernetes 129.
Okay.
Thank you, Ricardo, for the tracker. That will be helpful to keep tabs on it as we will go through the versions. Okay, so I think that we covered all the points that I was proposing the agenda and that were added. So the floor is open if anyone has any other additional points. So Ramesh.
Yeah, I just wanna seek some advice from Josh or Andrea Kimonas here. Obviously, in the initial release, we were saying the dashboard or UI for this is not gonna be there. I'm trying to see if there is any suggestions or recommendations you guys have in terms of how we can approach the Qflow dashboard team. I have not found. I don't think I found a working group meeting on the calendar. You guys suggest have any recommendations how we can see if we can get any support from that team in developing some of the screens, if possible. I'm trying to see how we can we can entice them to come and help us out.
From what I know, there's no central team in Kubeflow that was doing the dashboards. A year ago, a couple of engineers that were part of Aricto were doing a lot of work on this, but from then, I think that a lot of them are not actively in the project anymore to help. I do have some experience because I also have set up a lot of those, and I can at least give some recommendations like on some frameworks, but I think that right now, there's not too much horsepower that we can leverage from the community there.
Yeah, then maybe, there's probably a good amount of work, at least in the beginning, I would say, right, to bootstrap this one in.
But
yeah, go ahead.
For me to understand, Kubeflow right now had 2 pages, if I remember correctly, for show you the lineage via MLMD. Are we talking about those pages or different pages for model registry and extra functionalities?
The way we have designed it, at least on the Red Hat side, is we have a separate page for model registry where a user clicks on it to go see all the registered models, and they could just like if you go to a Hugging Face, you see a model card and you have a description and you have a model where the model is stored, a lot of labels on the model. Any properties you associated, like have parameters you registered with that model. So it's kind of a screen, you have a list of the models. When you drill down, you can go into hey, what are all the versions of the model under that model, registered model, right? When you click, each space, you can also have details of those, either at model level or at version level. You can have details of those, details of that page. Then the user has the capability to kind of deploy from that page, right? So to speak, from the screen, you could then somehow that triggers you generate a inference service from the AK server or whatever the integration one. So these are kind of things we at least we were envisioning on the Red Hat side. I would love to bring those similar capabilities on the on the Kubeflow side.
I have one more small question, but Jiraz, you want to speak?
No, yeah, I was just going to say, on the UI side, we'll start with something simple, like a separate page, for the model registry, where we'll just, list things and stuff. And as we work on, integrating other components more with model registry, like Kserve being able to fetch models from the model registry and so on. Maybe we'll have add links to those other pages in the rest of the console, so that people can jump to the model being referenced in the model registry and so on. Yeah. Ricardo.
Yeah,
Given us
so
some-
to be honest, I think the question we would need an answer right now is that if there is some sort of requirements on which front-end libraries we need to use for designing the front end. I believe there's some front-end stack that we should follow so we can get it integrated smoothly onto central dashboard or something like that. I see that KFP uses its own front end. I have no idea how does it integrates with central dashboard, but I think for a quick start, we can maybe get some recommendations on the stack that we should use and ways to integrate with central dashboard.
I can for sure help on that front, at least on the high. Oh, sorry, someone wants to speak.
Yeah, I don't know about the libraries being documented, but I thought that Stefano had put together a style guide. Do you remember this, Kimonos?
So yes, it's as just mentioned. One is the style guide, but to give also some context on style guide is one case on how to have the same like tables and UI elements on the discussion. Then on the frameworks and how to integrate on the UI, I can for sure provide a lot of context there. A short answer is we are actually quite we're flexible on what framework we want to use. For example, here the Kubeflow, the pipelines project is using React, and a lot of the other web apps that we had developed are using Angular and some common libraries for handling tables and some data structures. The integration between the central dashboard and the other applications is via a specific JavaScript file that all of the web apps are loading. There is some small technical details there, and there is some small implementation information on how to interact then once they load the library via JavaScript with the namespace selector and things from the dashboard. So from that side, we're pretty flexible in selecting either React, Angular, or anything actually, and there is a quite a nice way to integrate with the dashboard. So that shouldn't really limit us.
So each individual component brings their own web backend.
It is right now, yes. So it's initially that pipelines was maintained a little bit on its own and they had their own thing. But then when the rest of the components started catching up, we thought like, okay, we need some common code. So we created some common code between the web apps for volumes, notebooks, Kserve, and Katib as well. So those are using mostly the same front-end libraries. Some of them are using the same Python common backend code, but it's not 100% uniform across the way. And that's why then we had efforts like Stefano's on the style guide and how to have, okay, you can have different frameworks, but let's agree on like what's the common style so that we have the same experience in me.
Yeah. Very cool.
So would that be just sort of like, I'm not very technical on front end, but can I sort of like say that it's almost like you have the main dashboard is like an sort of like a navigation plus iframe, where basically the iframe. Okay, so thank you for the note. Okay, so understand correct. So it's like it's loading the iframe content
It's
from
exactly that, yes. And all of them are just deployments, and they just served their own deployments then.
So technically speaking, and this is a very sort of like a wild thought, so I'm not saying this is the suggestion that I would propose, but would it be correct to say that technically we could even do it, I mean, the UI for Model Registry in the beginning could even be like a backend generated HTML that is basically pushed and then basically integrated. Okay, thank you for the confirmation. Then at least, at least this, I think, widens the net of sort of like contributors that we may try to reach for. because if we say, oh, we need specifically Angular 2, not even 3 developers, it will be difficult. So that I think widens the potential options for that. Okay, thank you. It was good to keep it. All right. I think that Ramesh, you had the word on here one. Are there any other items that we wanted to touch on?
I don't have anything. Sorry for the last minute adding that one in, but that's a good discussion to.
No, I think that yeah, it was indeed a very good point. So thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah, we can entice Kimonos to help us out there a little bit. I'll see what I can do.
All right. Is there any other additional points? The floor is open for, say, the last 2 minutes. Going once, twice. Okay, so just as a reminder, I will move this meeting from bi-weekly Wednesday to bi-weekly Monday after the Kubeflow release. I will follow up on those channels. And but in the meantime, thank you all for attending today and a good discussion. I hope that I captured with the good the points in the minutes of the meetings, but it's open for comments. So if any correction is needed, please don't hesitate to put your suggestion there. I will see you then in about 2 weeks on the Monday. Keep following. Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Right.